James is in Tower Hamlets this evening. Hi, James.
Oh, hello. I've worked for about 10 years in schools, in secondary schools in central London. And I've got some observations because what the government has said is in relation to misogyny amongst kids and the proposal to have extra lessons in schools, okay? So we all agree that misogyny has got worse amongst children. I'm sure you agree with that, Ben, right? Do you agree with that?
How are you defining that, James? It's got worse in what sense?
Do you think the reason why the government is reacting is because there's higher levels of misogyny?
No, I think generally society has got less misogynistic than it was, but my goodness, we've still got too much of it.
Well, my observation is the school population has been changing over the last 10 or 20 years in inner London. And you have a very large proportion of students, and I don't know how often you've been in secondary schools in central London, but you will find in central London boroughs that the classification of white British is 10% or less of the student population. In
areas like yours in Tower Hamlets, yes.
Tower Hamlets, Newham, Hackney, Islington, Harrow, up there, Ealing, always says 10% or less. Okay? So we're not dealing with British values. We're dealing with children of foreign-born parents, usually, who often speak English as another language at home.
What are British values to you, James?
Well, I'm not going to go into what British values are. We're talking about misogyny, and I think equality and respect for women are British values. Would you agree?
No, I wouldn't, actually. I think Britain...
You wouldn't agree that's a British value?
Britain, for most of its history, has been a deeply, deeply misogynistic country. It was legal for husbands to rape their wives until the early 1990s in this country. Till the mid-1980s. You couldn't get a mortgage as a woman without a husband's permission. So, yes, we've made progress. We've made progress in the last 20, 30 years. We're getting there. But the idea that Britain has been this sort of utopia of gender equality it doesn't stand up to the facts at all.
Ben, do you have modern British values?
I don't know what they are, Jay. It depends how you're defining them.
You don't know what they are.
But you could. What are they to you? What are British values?
That leftists do, which is to pretend not to understand what the other person is saying,
James,
so they can't make their point.
What is it? Let me ask you what you think British values are, and then I'll tell you, and I'll answer your question about whether I think I have them. So, what are British values to you?
So I'm going to carry on with what my original point was. My original point was is that the population of students has changed a lot, and we've got a very large portion of students and who have different values about the role of women and see women as being inferior to men. And when you challenge this thought, we have PSHE lessons already where we teach respect for women and consent and all these things. And when you challenge these ideas, they say to you quite clearly, you're wrong because I'm taught at the mosque these things. And my religion is more important than what you're saying about misogyny. I don't agree.
And what are they saying they're being taught at the mosque?
They're taught that men are the maintainers of women, that the value of men's testimony is worth twice that of a woman, that men have the power to punish women, and that men must control them. And these are things in the Quran.
So when Kemi Badenoch says when Kemi Badenoch says cultures that don't respect women, do you think you interpret that as talking about Muslim people?
No, look, there's other.
Why doesn't she? Well, it's not obvious because she won't say who she means. She comes out with this sort of cryptic statement about cultures that don't respect women and doesn't and leaves us to fill in the gap. So
look. Okay, so I'll help you fill in the gaps. So in London, in the student population, the proportion of students that come from an ultra-Orthodox Jewish background that hold similar views from the Old Testament are 10,000 kids. Okay, that's how many there are.
And should they be deported under Kemi Badenoch's plan?
Well, so what she's saying, obviously she's being clever with the words and not just saying...
Clever's not the word that I would choose, James, respectfully.
It's not just Muslims, Ben, but the vast majority of the people she's talking about.
All right, but it's not just Muslims. So take your example, James, the sort of ultra-Orthodox Jewish community where gender roles are pretty entrenched and women certainly can't be rabbis or take part in religious services and so on. Should they be deported if Kemi Badenoch has her way?
I think there's a good argument for saying that we should be much more discerning about who we allow into the country.
But that's not what she's saying, is she? She's saying deport people in this country who have cultures that don't respect women. And you're right, there will be Muslim people who that applies to. There will be Jewish people who that applies to. The Catholic Church still won't ordain female bishops, so presumably the leaders of the Catholic Church are also playing this part in this misogynistic culture. Should they be... It sounds facetious, what I'm asking you. But it's not. It's the direct response. It's the direct conclusion from what Kemi Badenoch is saying. Because you are right to point out, James, that there are all sorts of cultures where elements of misogyny, I would say, are deeply entrenched. So should we deport them all?
That these children, they actually learn the Quran chapter and
all right,
verse.
So should they be deported?
At the weekend or after school.
So should those kids be deported, James? Because Kemi Badenoch seems to think they all should be deported.
Don't do Bible studies routinely,
James,
whereas Muslim children do.
All right, and should they be deported for it?
You know what? I think that people who have got very, very different views to modern democratic values, yes.
Even though they were our views in this country 30 years ago, quite a lot of them.
They're against democracy, Ben.
Right.
And they believe that women are less valuable than men, then yes, I'm on the side of women.
But that has been the history of our country, James, for almost the entirety of Britain's existence.
No, but we're talking about today. We're not going in a time
All right, so because we're now 30 years ahead or 40 years ahead of where some other cultures are, we're going to deport everybody who's maybe a little bit further behind. OK. That's the Kemi Badenoch plan. James, thank you for the call.